I am Nathan Cole Bennett, 35 years old, and I have always been the responsible one in our family. 2 weeks after my birthday passed, without a single acknowledgement, my dad called demanding Ryan's $1,900 for my brother's Aruba trip, but I was not even invited. When I questioned this absurdity, he threatened to cut me off completely. I answered calmly, "Perfect. Let me save you the trouble." That night, I made a decision they never expected. I grew up in Maplewood, an affluent suburb just outside Portland, in a sprawling colonial home with manicured lawns and a 3-car garage. From the outside, we looked like the perfect American family. My father, William Bennett, built his high-end real estate consulting firm from scratch, turning it into a regional powerhouse. My mother, Margaret Bennett, dedicated herself to climbing the social ladder, joining every exclusive committee and charity board in our community. And then there was my younger brother, Ryan, 3 years my junior, and the undisputed favorite child from the moment he was born. I learned early that love in our household was conditional. My father measured worth by achievement and financial success. My mother valued appearance and social connections. Neither seemed particularly interested in emotional connections, least of all with their firstborn son, who never quite fit their mold. As the oldest, I threw myself into academics, bringing home perfect report cards and prestigious awards, hoping each accomplishment might finally turn their heads. "That is expected of you, Nathan," my father would say without looking up from his newspaper. Meanwhile, Ryan would bring home a B- and receive a deluge of praise for trying his best. The disparities were impossible to ignore. For his 16th birthday, Ryan received a brand new Audi S5 sports car complete with a massive red bow in the driveway and a professional photographer to capture the moment for my mother's social media. My 16th birthday that same year warranted a card with $60 and a reminder that I should be saving for college. "You understand money better than your brother," my mother explained when I finally gathered the courage to ask why. "You are the practical one. Ryan is more delicate. Despite the constant favoritism, I excelled. I graduated summa cum laude from New York University with a double major in finance and business administration. I landed a coveted position at a top Phoenix marketing firm straight out of college and climbed the ranks through pure grit and determination. By 30, I was leading my own team and handling multi-million-dollar accounts. Moving to Phoenix had been my first real act of independence from my family. Hundreds of miles of distance gave me room to breathe and build a life that was not defined by their approval. I found a beautiful apartment overlooking the Camelback Mountain and the desert. I made genuine friends who valued me for who I was, not what I could provide, and even dated occasionally, though nothing serious had stuck. Still, I maintained contact with my family, calling weekly, visiting for major holidays, sending thoughtful gifts. Some stubborn part of me still craved their approval. I still believed that if I just tried hard enough, they might finally see me. My friend Julie Ramirez would shake her head during our whiskey nights when I checked my phone repeatedly for texts from my mother or brother. "They do not deserve you, Nathan," she would say, refilling my glass. "The family you choose is more important than the family you are born into." I would smile and nod, but deep down, I was not ready to accept that truth. Blood is thicker than water, right? That is what we are all taught from childhood. This year, my 35th birthday fell on a Tuesday. I took the day off work, treating myself to a full-day spa treatment and a fancy lunch. My phone remained depressingly quiet all day with no calls or texts from my family. My friends rallied, of course. Julie organized a surprise dinner with our friend group, complete with champagne and a decadent chocolate cake. My colleague Adam Price sent flowers to my apartment. My neighbor Mr. Whitman even left homemade cookies at my door, but nothing from my parents or Ryan. I told myself not to care. I was a grown man, for goodness sake, not a child waiting for birthday wishes. Still, as I blew out the candles on my cake that night, surrounded by friends who had become my chosen family, I could not help the hollow feeling in my chest. Maybe they forgot I said to Julie as she helped clean up after the party. "All three of them simultaneously when your birthday has not changed in 35 years? Julie raised an eyebrow. You know, busy. Dad's company is expanding to the West Coast. Mom is planning that charity gala, and Ryan just started his new job at that boutique art gallery. Julie just looked at me, her expression a mixture of sympathy and frustration. You always make excuses for them. They are family, I said, weakly. No, Julie replied firmly. They are relatives. There is a difference. I changed the subject, but her words lingered. Still, I pushed down my hurt feelings and moved forward, throwing myself into work over the next 2 weeks, determined not to dwell on yet another disappointment from the people who were supposed to love me most. Little did I know that my father's next call would be the catalyst for everything to change. That Tuesday, exactly 2 weeks after my ignored birthday, started like any other workday. I arrived at my downtown office by 7:30, picked up a latte from the shop in our building lobby, and settled in to review the final presentation for a major automotive client we were pitching that afternoon. The morning passed in a productive blur. By noon, I felt confident about our pitch and decided to take a quick lunch break at my desk, unwrapping the sandwich I had picked up on my morning commute. That was when my phone lit up with an incoming call, my father's name flashing on the screen. My heart did an odd little jump. Dad rarely called me directly. Usually any family news came through my mother or occasionally Ryan. For a fleeting moment, I wondered if perhaps he was calling about my birthday, belatedly remembering the son he had forgotten 2 weeks prior. I swallowed my bite of sandwich and answered, "Hey, Dad." "Nathan." His voice was brisk, businesslike. No warmth, no greeting, just my name stated as a fact. "Is everything okay?" I asked, immediately, assuming something must be wrong for him to call out of the blue. "Everything is fine," he replied. "Listen, I am calling about Ryan's birthday next month. My brother's birthday, of course. I should have known better than to hope he was calling about mine. We have decided to do something special this year," he continued without pausing. "We are flying him to Aruba for a week at that new exclusive resort that just opened, the Coral Bay Resort. All his friends are going. It is going to be quite an event." "That sounds nice," I said, wondering why he was telling me this. Was I expected to send a gift or help with planning? The answer came swiftly and unexpectedly. "Your ticket is already booked. Yours too. You just need to send your $1,900 today." I nearly choked on my water. $1,900 for what exactly? "For your portion of the trip?" Obviously, my father said, his tone suggesting I was being deliberately dense. My mind raced, trying to process this information. Wait, am I being invited to Ryan's birthday trip? The silence on the other end lasted just a beat too long before my father's voice came back tight with barely controlled anger. "No, you are not invited, but you need to contribute to the costs. Your brother has a lot of friends he wants to bring along, and you know how these exclusive resorts are. There is a minimum booking requirement." I sat perfectly still, sandwich forgotten, as the full implication of his words sank in. My own father was calling to demand $1,900 for a trip I was not even invited to attend. Not a loan, not a gift for my brother, but payment for someone else's place on this lavish vacation. "Let me get this straight," I said slowly. "You want me to pay $1,900 for a trip to Aruba that I am not going on and was not invited to?" "Do not be difficult, Nathan," he snapped. "You are the one with the fancy marketing job in Phoenix. Your brother is still establishing himself in the art world. He cannot afford to bring all his friends, and your mother and I are already covering most of the expenses." "Dad." "That is?" I struggled to find words that were not openly confrontational. "That does not seem reasonable. Why would I pay for a stranger to go on vacation?" His voice turned cold. "Because you are family, and family supports each other. I need that money today, Nathan. The final payment is due. I cannot just transfer $1,900 today," I protested. "I have my own expenses, my own life." "What expenses?" You do not have children. You are not married. What could you possibly be spending your money on that is more important than supporting your brother?" The contempt in his voice was palpable. Something in me shifted, then, a tectonic plate of emotions suddenly breaking loose after years of pressure. "No," I said simply. "What did you say?" His voice dropped dangerously. "I said no. I will not be sending money for a trip I am not part of. Listen to me very carefully." His voice was now barely controlled rage. "If you do not transfer that money today, I swear to God, do not expect another call from this family ever again. You have always been selfish, Nathan. Always thinking about yourself first. This is your chance to prove you are actually part of this family." In that moment, with those words hanging in the air between us, everything became crystal clear. This was not love. This was not even family. This was emotional extortion. "Perfect," I replied, my voice strangely calm. "Let me save you the trouble." "What is that supposed to mean?" he demanded, but I could hear the uncertainty creeping into his tone. I had never stood up to him. Never. "It means goodbye, Dad." I ended the call. I sat motionless at my desk, my lunch forgotten, my hands trembling slightly. Had I really just done that? Had I finally stood up to my father after 35 years of trying to earn his approval? My phone immediately rang again, his name flashing on the screen. I declined the call. It rang again and again. I put it on silent and turned it face down on my desk. The rest of the afternoon passed in a blur. I went through the client pitch on autopilot, somehow managing to present effectively, despite the emotional hurricane brewing inside me. My team was thrilled when we secured the account, but I barely registered their excitement, nodding and smiling mechanically as they discussed celebration plans. That evening, I called Julie and asked if she could come over. I needed to tell someone what had happened to make sure I had not imagined the whole bizarre interaction. He said what Julie exclaimed, nearly spilling her wine, when I recounted the call about $1,900 for someone else's vacation. "Is he out of his mind?" "Apparently," I said, still feeling oddly detached from the situation. "And the threat to cut you off if you did not pay, that is straight-up emotional abuse." "I know. And I did know, with a clarity that had eluded me for years." "I think this is it, Julie. I think I am finally done trying to win their approval." Julie reached across my kitchen counter and squeezed my hand. "It is about time. What are you going to do?" I looked at my phone, which had been buzzing periodically with calls and messages from both my father and mother all evening. Something they never saw coming. After Julie left that night, I sat alone in my darkened apartment, the city lights of Phoenix twinkling through my windows as I contemplated the magnitude of what had just transpired. For the first time in my life, I had said no to my family's demands. More than that, I had hung up on my father something that would have been unthinkable just 24 hours earlier. My mind drifted back through years of similar incidents, moments when I had been treated as nothing more than a convenient ATM or emotional support system for my brother. There was the time Ryan crashed his Audi S5 6 months after getting it, and I was suddenly expected to loan him $4,500 for repairs, because he could not tell our parents. The money was never repaid, and when I gently brought it up months later, he acted hurt that I would put a price on helping family. Then there was my mother calling last Christmas Eve asking if I would be a dear and order a last-minute gift for my father because she had forgotten and all the stores were closed. The custom golf clubs arrived the next day with my mother's name on the gift tag, while my carefully selected book on architectural history for my father was barely acknowledged. And now this, the $1,900 on demand for a trip I was not even invited to attend. The pattern was suddenly so obvious, so blatant, that I wondered how I had missed it for so many years. I was not family to them. I was a resource to be tapped whenever convenient. An afterthought, the responsible one who would always say yes because I desperately wanted to belong. Well, not anymore. I opened my laptop and began searching through my financial records. Over the years, I had maintained several connections to my family that now seemed like vulnerabilities. I was still listed as the emergency contact on all their accounts. My father had added me as a signatory on one of his business accounts years ago when he was hospitalized briefly, just in case something happened. I was still named as a beneficiary on several family insurance policies and investment accounts. All these connections suddenly felt like chains tying me to people who did not truly value me as a son or brother, but rather as a safety net, a backup plan, a reliable source of support without the inconvenience of reciprocity. I made a list of every single connection that needed to be severed. By the time I finished, it was nearly 2 a.m, but instead of feeling exhausted, I felt energized, empowered. For once, I was taking control of my own narrative. The next morning, I called in sick to work for the first time in years. I had important business to attend to. My first call was to my attorney, Daniel Brooks, who had helped me with my will and other legal matters since I had moved to Phoenix. I need to make some significant changes, I told him when we met at his downtown office. I want to remove all family members from my will and other legal documents. Daniel raised his eyebrows but nodded without judgment. We can certainly do that. Who would you like to name instead? I had given this considerable thought overnight. I want to create a trust. Half of my estate should go to a selection of my close friends that I will list for you. The other half should be donated to charities supporting children from emotionally abusive homes. Daniel nodded, making notes. And for your healthcare proxy and power of attorney, Julie, I said without hesitation. She is the person I trust most in this world. By midday, I had resigned as signatory on my father's business account, removed myself as emergency contact on all family insurance policies, and created a new will that reflected my actual values rather than outdated familial obligations. Next, I contacted my bank and investment firm to ensure that no one from my family could access any of my accounts, even in an emergency. I changed all my password security questions and contact information, systematically removing any avenues they might use to manipulate me financially in the future. As I worked through my list, my phone continued to buzz with messages and calls from my family. I did not read or listen to any of them. Instead, I blocked their numbers one by one. If they wanted to reach me now, they would have to work for it. That afternoon, I logged into my social media accounts and shared a thoughtful post about toxic family relationships and the importance of setting boundaries. I did not name names or share specific details, but anyone who knew me well would understand the significance. I then adjusted my privacy settings to prevent my family from seeing my posts or contacting me through those platforms. The final step was perhaps the most symbolic. I took the $1,900 I would have sent to my father and transferred it into a newly created Freedom Fund savings account. This would be the beginning of a fund for a truly special solo trip, one where I would celebrate my independence rather than continue to bankroll my own exclusion. After some research, I booked a 12-day trip to Savannah, Georgia, scheduled for the exact same week as Ryan's Aruba extravaganza. While they would be surrounded by the artificial luxury of a resort where they did not even want me, I would be experiencing the authentic beauty and historic richness of a city known for its resilience and self-discovery. As I confirmed my booking, I felt something I had not experienced in relation to my family for a very long time. Peace. Not anger, not hurt, not desperate longing for approval, but simply peace. I had finally stopped playing a rigged game that I could never win. That night, I slept better than I had in years. The first sign that my family had discovered they were blocked came the very next day. I was back at work, focused on implementing the strategy for our new client, when my office phone rang. My company listed my direct line on our website, making it easy for anyone to bypass my cell phone if they were determined enough. Nathan Bennett speaking. I answered professionally. Nathan, thank goodness. Why are you not answering your phone? My mother's voice was shrill with panic. I am working, Mom. What do you need? I kept my tone neutral professional, as though speaking to a demanding client rather than my mother. Your father is absolutely beside himself. What did you say to him yesterday? He came home in such a state, and then when we tried to call you back, it went straight to voicemail. Are you deliberately ignoring us? My mother demanded. I'm not interested in discussing Dad's demand for money for a trip I wasn't invited to, I replied calmly. Oh, honey, you misunderstood, my mother said, her voice shifting into that cajoling tone she always used to gloss over conflict. Of course you're welcome to come to Turks and Caicos. Your father just assumed you'd be too busy with work to take time off. I almost laughed at the transparent lie. That's not what he said, and you know it. I need to go, Mom. I have a meeting. Wait, what about the money? Your father says the final payment is due today. I won't be contributing. My voice was firm. But Nathan, this is your brother's special birthday. Don't you care at all? Goodbye, Mom. I hung up. Throughout the day, the attempts to contact me escalated. My brother sent a barrage of text messages to my work email since he couldn't reach my phone. What is wrong with you? Dad is furious. Mom is crying. Are you happy now? Why are you being so selfish about my birthday? Answer your phone. Seriously, what is your problem? I didn't respond to any of them, focusing instead on my work and the strange sense of lightness I felt at finally breaking free of their manipulation. By evening, they had moved on to contacting my friends. Dana called laughing as she told me that my mother had reached out to her on social media, asking her to talk some sense into me. I told her I fully support your decision to stop being their personal bank, Dana said. She didn't like that much. Even my father's business partner, Michael, whom I'd met only a handful of times at company events, called my office. Your father asked me to reach out, he said awkwardly. He seems to think you're having some kind of breakdown. Imperfectly fine, Michael, I assured him. This is a private family matter, but I appreciate your concern. The next wave came from extended family. My Aunt Susan, my father's sister, left a voicemail. Nathan, what on earth did you do to your father? Has called me 3 times today. Absolutely livid about something. Call me back, please. My cousin Jennifer texted, Hey, weird question, but did something happen between you and Uncle George? My mom just got a super strange call from him asking if she'd heard from you. I sent brief, polite responses to the extended family I actually cared about, simply saying that I was taking some space from my immediate family for personal reasons and was doing fine. Then came the legal notices. 3 days after our phone call, my father would have received formal notification that I had removed myself as a signatory from his business account. 5 days after, my parents would have received updated paperwork showing my removal as a beneficiary from their life insurance policies. A weekend later, they would have gotten confirmation that I was no longer listed as their emergency contact on any accounts. Each of these changes represented another severed tie, another step toward true independence, and clearly they were beginning to panic. On day 10 after my decision, the messages took a darker turn. My mother left a trembling voicemail on my office line. Nathan, please. Your father is having some kind of breakdown over whatever you have done. He is not sleeping, not eating. He is talking about flying to Brighton. Please call us back. We are worried about you, and your father is not well. My brother's texts shifted from angry to desperate. I do not care about the stupid trip anymore. Dad is scaring me. He is not acting like himself. Whatever you did, please undo it. My birthday is ruined anyway. No one is even talking about it anymore because everyone is so worried about you and Dad. I remained firm in my silence, though each message tugged at the lifetime of conditioning that had taught me to put my family's emotions above my own. Still, as I packed for my upcoming trip to Hamilton City, I felt more and more certain that I was finally doing what I should have done years ago, protecting myself from people who had never protected me. The night before my flight, I received perhaps the most telling message of all. My mother, clearly at her wit's end, left a sobbing voicemail. We were wrong. Okay, just undo whatever you did. Your father will not tell me exactly what is happening, but it is something to do with the business accounts and insurance policies. In the end, we need you. Those last 3 words confirmed everything. Not we love you, or we miss you, or we are sorry, but we need you. Even in their desperation, they could not see me as anything but a resource to be utilized. The next morning, I boarded my flight to Hamilton City. I turned off my phone and left the family chaos behind. For the next 10 days, I would focus solely on my own healing, my own joy, my own life. They had made it clear for years that my birthday was not worth acknowledging. Now I would show them that my absence was impossible to ignore. I returned from Hamilton City transformed. 10 days of quiet reflection, exploration of ancient landmarks, and conversations with travelers from around the world had given me a perspective I had never had before. For perhaps the first time in my adult life, I felt completely at peace with who I was without the desperate need for validation from people who had never been able to give it. My mind was clear and my heart felt strangely whole. Despite the family bonds I had broken, I took an extra day at home before returning to work, luxuriating in the calm of my apartment and the freedom of knowing I had finally set boundaries that honored my worth. That peace was shattered on my second day back in Brighton by an unexpected knock at my door. I was not expecting any packages or visitors. When I looked through the peephole, my stomach dropped. Standing in my hallway were my mother and brother, looking haggard and determined. For a moment, I considered pretending I was not home. But I knew this confrontation was inevitable, and perhaps it was better to have it on my home turf where I could ask them to leave if necessary. I opened the door, but did not invite them in. "This is a surprise. You left us no choice," my mother said, her voice tight. "You have blocked our calls, our messages, everything." "Can we please come in?" Ryan asked, looking uncomfortable standing in the hallway. "We have come all this way." Against my better judgment, I stepped aside to let them enter. They looked around my apartment with obvious curiosity. Neither of them had visited me in Brighton before, despite my having lived here for nearly a decade. "Nice place," Aaron commented, taking in the mountain view from my windows. "Thanks." I remained standing, making no move to offer them refreshments or to sit. This was not a social call, and I was not going to pretend otherwise. "Nathan." My mother began, her voice taking on the reasonable, slightly condescending tone she used when trying to manage difficult situations. "This has gone far enough. Whatever point you are trying to make, you have made it. Now it is time to fix the mess you have created." "What mess would that be?" I asked, calmly. "Do not play dumb." Aaron snapped, his earlier discomfort giving way to irritation. "You know exactly what you did. Dad is falling apart. The bank called him about changes to his accounts. The insurance company sent all these documents. He thinks his business is at risk somehow. Nothing I did affects his business, I clarified. I simply removed myself from his accounts and policies. He has every right to replace me with someone else as a signatory or beneficiary." "But why would you do such a thing?" my mother demanded. "After everything we have done for you." The question was so absurd, so completely detached from reality that I actually laughed. "What exactly have you done for me? Mom forgot my birthday, demanded money for a trip I was not invited to, consistently favored Aaron for my entire life." 28-11. "That is not fair." Aaron protested, though his eyes slid away from mine. "Is it not?" I asked. "Let us be honest for once. Why was Dad really so upset about me not sending the money? What was that 1,700 actually for? My mother and brother?" Exchanged a look that confirmed my suspicions, even before they spoke. "Dad promised my friends a free trip." Aaron finally admitted, sinking onto my couch uninvited. 6 of them. He told them not to worry about the cost, that everything would be covered. But he could not actually afford it, I surmised. So he decided I would cover it instead without even being invited myself. He was going to invite you eventually, my mother said weakly, once the payment was settled. No, he was not, I stated flatly. And we all know it. I was good enough to help pay, but not good enough to include. That has been the dynamic my entire life. You are being dramatic, my mother sighed. You have always been the responsible one, the one we could count on. Aaron needs more support. I am 30 years old, Mom. Aaron interjected, looking uncomfortable. You do not need to talk about me like I'm still a child. You see me as a checkbook, not a son. I continued, ignoring the interruption. Dad made that abundantly clear with his ultimatum. He was just angry, my mother insisted. You know how he gets. He did not mean it. He did mean it. And so did I when I said I was done. My mother's face crumpled slightly, a rare show of genuine emotion. Nathan, please, your father is not well. Whatever you did with all those accounts and documents, it triggered something in him. He is convinced his business is somehow compromised. He is talking about conspiracy theories about his partners trying to push him out. He is not sleeping, barely eating. That sounds like a mental health issue, I said carefully. One that has nothing to do with me removing myself as an emergency contact or account signatory. Those changes affect me, not him. But it was the timing Aaron pressed. Right after your fight about the money, he thinks it is all connected, that you are trying to ruin him somehow. I shook my head, genuinely confused by this paranoid reaction. That makes no sense. None of this makes sense, my mother exclaimed, including you suddenly cutting us all off without warning. Without warning, I echoed in disbelief. I have been trying to be a part of this family for 34 years. I have been patient, understanding, generous. I have made excuses for all of you for the forgotten birthdays, the constant comparisons, the emotional manipulation. Dad's call was the final straw, not the first offense. The room fell silent as my words hung in the air. For perhaps the first time I saw uncertainty cross my mother's face, as though she were actually hearing me. 31:09. We have always seen you as the strong one, she finally said quietly. The one who did not need us as much. Everyone needs their family. Mom, I replied, feeling a deep sadness beneath my resolve. I just finally accepted that I do not really have one, not in the way that matters. Aaron was staring at the floor, unusually quiet. When he looked up, I was surprised to see tears in his eyes. I have known it was not fair, he admitted in a small voice, the way they treated us differently. I felt guilty about it for years, but it was easier to accept the favoritism than to challenge it. My mother looked shocked at this betrayal from her favored son. Aaron, that is not true. We love you both equally. No, you do not, Aaron replied with surprising firmness. And we all know it. That is why Dad thought he could demand money from Nathan without even inviting him on the trip, because he has never been treated as a full member of this family. The raw honesty of his admissions stunned me. In all our years, Aaron had never acknowledged the disparity in our treatment. Your father loves you, Nathan, my mother insisted, though her voice lacked conviction. He is just not good at showing it. Please, you need to fix things with him. Call him. Tell him you are not trying to harm his business, that those account changes were just, I do not know, a mistake or something. They were not a mistake, I said firmly. They were a boundary, and I will not pretend otherwise to soothe Dad's unfounded paranoia. You do not understand, my mother said, her voice dropping to almost a whisper. There is more going on with your father than you know. Things have been difficult for some time. What things, I asked, suddenly suspicious of her evasiveness. She glanced at Aaron, who looked away uncomfortably. "Mom," I pressed. "What things?" "Financial things," she finally admitted. "Business problems. He has been under tremendous stress. Your brother's birthday trip was supposed to be a bright spot. A celebration before—" She trailed off, but I could fill in the blanks. "Before what?" "Before the business fails. Is that why he needed my 1,700 so desperately? Is the great Sir William Bennett in financial trouble?" My mother flinched at my tone but did not deny it, and in her silence I suddenly saw everything clearly, a revelation that had been hiding in plain sight for years. "It is not just financial problems, is it?" I asked, the pieces finally falling into place. "I know about the other family, Mom." The color drained from my mother's face. Aaron gasped audibly, his eyes darting between us. "What are you talking about?" my mother asked, but her shaking voice betrayed her. "Dad's second family in Richmond. The other woman. The 2 children. I have known for years." Absolute silence filled my apartment. My mother sat frozen, her face a mask of shock and dawning horror. Ryan looked equally stunned, but for a different reason. I realized he had not known. How my mother finally whispered, "I found receipts when I was helping organize Dad's office during college. Rent payments for an apartment in Richmond, child support payments, birthday gifts." I followed him. Once saw them with my own eyes. A woman about your age, Mom. A teenage boy and a girl who looked about 10 at the time. "You never said anything," my mother said, her voice hollow. "What was there to say? You both made it clear that maintaining appearances was more important than anything. I assumed you knew and had chosen to look the other way." "I did not know." Ryan said, his voice small and childlike suddenly. "How could you not tell me?" "It was not my secret to tell," I replied gently. "And honestly, would either of you have believed me over Dad?" The question hung in the air, unanswered, because we all knew the truth. They would not have. William Bennett's word was gospel in our family, his authority unquestioned. "So you see," I continued, "I am not the one who has been keeping secrets or damaging this family. I am just finally refusing to participate in the dysfunction." My mother stood up suddenly, gathering her purse with trembling hands. "We should go," she said to Ryan, not looking at me. "Mom, we cannot just leave after what he just said," Ryan protested, still looking shell-shocked. "What about Dad? What about the other family?" "Not now," my mother hissed. Then, turning to me with a face drained of color, she said, "I think you have done quite enough damage for one day, Nathan." "I did not damage anything," I replied calmly. "I just stopped pretending." They left without another word, my mother practically dragging Ryan, who kept looking back at me with a mixture of confusion, hurt, and something that might have been dawning respect. As the door closed behind them, I let out a long, slow breath. The truth was finally out, at least part of it. The confrontation had gone nothing like I expected, revealing fissures in my family I had not fully understood despite years of suspicion. I should have felt victorious, having finally stood my ground and spoken truths long buried. Instead, I felt a complex mixture of liberation and sadness. Liberation from secrets and pretense. Sadness for all the years wasted trying to earn love from people incapable of giving it freely. But beneath it all was a bedrock of certainty. I had done the right thing, not just for my own dignity, but perhaps in some strange way for all of us. The carefully constructed facade of our family had finally cracked open, letting in painful but necessary light. The days following my confrontation with my mother and brother passed in complete silence from my family. No calls on my office line, no messages through friends, nothing. It was as though they had collectively decided that if I would not play by their rules, I did not exist at all. This silence should have hurt, and on some level it did. 34 years of conditioning does not disappear overnight, but mostly I felt a growing sense of peace and clarity about who I was outside of their expectations and manipulations. At work, I threw myself into our new client project with renewed focus and energy. My team noticed the change, commenting on my innovative ideas and decisive leadership. What they did not know was that I was channeling all the mental energy previously consumed by family drama into my career. My boss called me into his office. I entered wearily, wondering if somehow my personal issues had affected my work performance despite my best efforts. "Nathan," he began, gesturing for me to take a seat. "I have been reviewing the work you have done with the automotive client. The feedback has been exceptional." "Thank you," I said, relaxing slightly. "The team really pulled together on that one." "Yes, but they all credit your leadership for the success." He leaned forward, hands clasped on his desk. "Which is why I want to discuss an opportunity with you. The position of Executive Creative Director is opening next month. Janet is relocating to our London office. I would like you to consider applying for her role." I blinked in surprise. The Executive Creative Director position was 2 levels above my current role, a jump that would typically take years to achieve. "Are you serious?" I asked before I could filter my response. He laughed. "Completely serious. Your work has been outstanding for years, Nathan, but these past few weeks you have shown a level of focus and creativity that is impossible to ignore. I think you are ready." I left his office with a sense of possibility I had not felt in years. This promotion would mean more responsibility, certainly, but also a substantial salary increase and the creative freedom I had always wanted. It felt like the universe was confirming that I was on the right path. That weekend, I decided it was time for another fresh start. My current apartment, lovely as it was, held memories of late-night calls from my family, of tears shed over forgotten birthdays and holidays, of the constant background anxiety of waiting for the next demand or disappointment. I contacted a realtor and began searching for a new place somewhere that would reflect this new chapter of my life. My circle of friends, always supportive, seemed to expand and deepen during this time. Without the constant drain of my family's emotional demands, I found I had more energy for genuine connections. I accepted dinner invitations I might previously have declined, joined a book club that met monthly in a cozy neighborhood cafe. Even went on a few dates, though none sparked anything serious. Julie remained my rock, checking in regularly and celebrating each small victory in my journey toward independence. "I am proud of you," she told me over brunch one Sunday. "I know this has not been easy, but you seem lighter somehow." She was right. Despite the lingering sadness of family estrangement, I did feel lighter, as though I had put down a burden I had been carrying for so long, I had forgotten it was not part of me. Then I received a text from an unknown number. "It is Ryan. Got a new phone. Can we talk just us?" I stared at the message for a long time, weighing my options. Part of me wanted to maintain the clean break I had made. Another part recognized that of all my family members, Ryan was perhaps the least culpable for the dysfunction, having been as much a pawn in our parents' games as I had, albeit in a different way. After careful consideration, I replied, "Coffee shop at 16th and Willamette Saturday 10th. Just us." His response came immediately. "I will be there. Thank you." On Saturday, I arrived at the coffee shop early, securing a quiet table in the corner where we could talk privately. I spotted Ryan the moment he walked in, looking both familiar and strangely different. He had lost weight, and there was a new tension in his face that had not been there before. "Hi," he said awkwardly, sliding into the seat across from me after ordering a latte. "Hi," I replied, studying him. "You look tired." He gave a humorless laugh. "That is putting it mildly. The past month has been intense." I waited, letting him find his words without prompting. "After what you said," he began hesitantly about Dad and the other family. I could not just ignore it. I did some digging of my own. and I asked, though I already knew what he had found. "You were right," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "About all of it. The apartment in Richmond, the woman, the kids. I found bank statements, photos, even a second phone. When I confronted him, he did not even deny it. Said it had been going on for almost 20 years, even longer than I suspected." "How is Mom taking it?" I asked, though I was not sure I really wanted to know. Ryan's expression told me everything before he spoke. "They are getting divorced. Mom threw him out the day after I showed her what I found. He is staying in a hotel now, but I think he will probably move to Richmond permanently." I nodded, unsurprised. "And the business?" I asked. "That is the other thing," Ryan said, wrapping his hands around his coffee cup as though seeking warmth. "It has been in trouble for years. Dad made some bad investments, lost major clients. He has been covering it up, taking loans, moving money around. That is why he was so panicked when you removed yourself from his accounts. He thought you had discovered the financial problems and were somehow going to expose him. The irony was not lost on me. I had cut ties to protect myself emotionally, not realizing my father had much bigger secrets to hide." "The Aruba trip?" I asked. Ryan looked genuinely ashamed. A last hurrah before everything fell apart. I guess he could not afford it. "Not really. That is why he was so desperate for your contribution. My birthday was just an excuse." We sat in silence for a moment, absorbing the magnitude of the deception that had shaped our family for decades. "I am sorry," Ryan finally said, looking up at me with tear-filled eyes. "For everything. For not seeing how unfairly you were treated. For accepting the favoritism because it benefited me. For letting them make you feel like you were not important." His apology, unexpected and seemingly sincere, caught me off guard. In all our years of sibling rivalry and inequality, I had never imagined hearing those words from him. "Thank you for saying that," I replied carefully. "It means a lot. I have been doing a lot of thinking," he continued, "about our childhood, about the kind of person I want to be. I do not want to be like them, Nathan. I do not want to live behind lies and manipulation." "What will you do now?" I asked. "I quit the gallery job," he said with a small smile. "I am going back to school, actually, to finish my degree in education. I always wanted to teach high school history, but Dad thought it was not prestigious enough. For the first time in our adult lives, I felt a genuine connection with my brother, seeing him not as my parents' favorite or my rival, but as another man trying to find his authentic path." "That sounds perfect for you," I told him sincerely. "You were always good with history. Mom is selling the house," he continued. "She is moving to Santa Fe, New Mexico to live near Aunt Linda. She says she needs a complete change." I nodded, trying to imagine my status-conscious mother leaving behind her carefully cultivated social circle in Seattle for the desert landscape of Santa Fe. Perhaps she too was finally breaking free of pretense. "And what about us?" Ryan asked tentatively. "I know I have no right to ask for anything from you after everything that has happened, but you are still my brother. The only person who really understands what it was like growing up in that house." I considered his question seriously. Could I let Ryan back into my life without reopening old wounds? Could we build something new? Something honest from the ashes of our dysfunctional family? I think I said slowly that we could try. Not to go back to how things were because that was not healthy for either of us, but maybe to build something new. Something based on mutual respect and honesty. Ryan's relief was palpable. I would like that very much. As we finished our coffee and prepared to go our separate ways, he hesitated, then pulled an envelope from his bag. "Mom asked me to give you this. She did not think you would agree to see her." I took the envelope, recognizing Margaret's elegant handwriting spelling out my name on the front. "Thank you for coming today, Ryan, and for being honest." "It is the least I could do," he replied. literally the very least. We parted with an awkward hug knot, quite comfortable but genuine in its intent. I waited until I was back in my apartment to open my mother's letter. The handwritten note was brief, but contained words I had never expected to read. Nathan, you were right about everything. I have spent weeks trying to understand how we failed you so completely, how I failed you as a mother. The truth is, I have no excuse. I allowed your father's preference for Ryan to become the defining dynamic of our family. I participated in making you feel less valued, less loved. I cannot undo those years of hurt, but I want you to know that I see it now and I am profoundly sorry. You deserved better. If you ever find it in your heart to speak with me again, I would be grateful for the chance, but I will understand if that door is closed forever. With love and regret, Mom. I folded the letter carefully and put it in my desk drawer. I was not ready to respond yet. I was not sure if I ever would be. But for the first time, I felt my mother had actually seen me, had acknowledged the reality of our family dynamic without excuses or deflection. As for my father, his silence spoke volumes. No letter, no attempt at contact, not even through intermediaries. He had shown his true colors when threatened with the loss of control. And those colors were not pretty. Some relationships, I was learning, are not worth saving no matter how strong the biological connection. That night I looked around my apartment at the life I had built for myself despite the emotional neglect of my childhood. I thought about the promotion waiting for me, the new apartment I would soon find, the genuine friendships that sustained me. I thought about Ryan's apology, my mother's letter, and my father's telling silence. The pain was not gone, might never be completely gone. But alongside it now was something new, a sense of possibility, of a future, defined by my own choices rather than by the approval I had never received from my father. For the first time in my life, I felt truly free to become whoever I wanted to be without the weight of familial expectations dragging me down. That freedom I was discovering was worth every painful step of the journey. 1 year later, I stood in my new downtown apartment adjusting a framed photograph on the wall. The picture showed me on a historic wall in Hamilton City, arms outstretched, face turned toward the sun. It had become something of a personal symbol, a reminder of the moment I chose myself over the toxic patterns of my past. So much had changed in a year. I had accepted the executive creative director position and thrived in the role, bringing in 3 major new clients and mentoring younger team members with an empathy born from my own experiences. My new apartment, with its expansive views of the Brighton skyline and thoughtfully chosen furnishings, felt like a true sanctuary, unburdened by painful memories or obligations. My relationship with Ryan had evolved in ways I never expected. We spoke weekly, not from obligation, but from genuine interest in each other's lives. He had completed his first semester back at school with excellent grades and was volunteering at an after-school program for underprivileged children. The artificial personality he had adopted to please our parents had fallen away, revealing a man with genuine compassion and a quiet determination I had never fully appreciated before. I had a long talk with my therapist about you yesterday. He told me during one of our calls about how different things might have been if we had been allies instead of competitors growing up. We were not competitors, I reminded him gently. We were pieces being moved on a chessboard we did not control. Still, he insisted. I wish I had seen it sooner. Stood up for you somehow. We were children, Ryan. The responsibility was not ours. My mother and I had reached a cautious detente. After several months of reflection, I finally responded to her letter with one of my own, opening the door to limited communication. We now exchanged emails occasionally, careful, thoughtful messages that avoided the superficiality of our past relationship. She seemed different in Santa Fe, more authentic somehow, as though the geographical distance from her old life had allowed her to shed pretenses along with possessions. I am volunteering at a women's shelter, she wrote in a recent email. Many of the women here were financially controlled by their partners, something that feels uncomfortably familiar now that I look back on my marriage. I think of you often as I help them set up independent bank accounts and create RSUMs. Your courage inspired me more than you know. My father remained conspicuously absent from my life. Through Ryan, I learned he had indeed moved to Richmond permanently after the divorce, integrating his second family into his daily life after decades of secrecy. His business had finally collapsed under the weight of debt and mismanagement, forcing him to sell his share to his partners at a fraction of its worth. The man who had demanded $1,900 from a son he could not be bothered to invite on vacation was now reportedly working as a consultant for a much smaller firm. His empire and illusions of grandeur gone. I felt no satisfaction in his downfall, only a distant sadness for a man who had sacrificed authentic relationships on the altar of control and appearance. The most unexpected development came when I received notice that my maternal grandmother, Helen Ward, a woman I had barely known, had passed away and left me a substantial inheritance. She always admired your independence, my mother explained when I called her in confusion. She never said much that was not her way, but she kept every article about your marketing awards, every Christmas card you sent. I think she saw herself in you. The inheritance was not life-changing, but it was significant enough to give me options I had not had before. After careful consideration, I decided to use part of it to establish a scholarship fund for business students who lacked family financial support. The Nathan Bennett Founders Fellowship would be awarded annually to a promising student who demonstrated resilience and creativity in the face of personal challenges. The rest I invested for my future, a future that now felt wide open with possibility rather than constrained by obligation or the desperate need for approval. Last Thanksgiving, instead of making the obligatory trip to Portland or sitting alone with takeout, I hosted dinner in my new apartment. Around my table sat Julie and her boyfriend, two colleagues from work, my downstairs neighbor, Mr. Whitman, and most surprisingly, Ryan, who had flown in from the Portland area specifically for the occasion. As we passed dishes and shared stories, I looked around at these people who had chosen to be in my life and whom I had chosen in return. This, I realized, was the true meaning of family, not the accident of shared DNA, but the deliberate choice to show up for each other with honesty and care. I would like to make a toast, Ryan said, raising his glass, to my brother who had the courage to break the cycle, who taught me that real love does not come with price tags or conditions, who showed me what strength really looks like. As glasses clinked and warm smiles were exchanged, I felt a sense of completion that had nothing to do with my parents' approval and everything to do with finally honoring my own worth. The price of admission to my life was no longer desperate compliance or financial contribution, but simple respect and authenticity. Those unwilling or unable to pay that price no longer had access to my time, energy, or heart. And in that boundary, I had found freedom. Looking back on that phone call when my father demanded $1,900 for a trip I was not invited to attend, I now recognize it as the gift it truly was. Not the gift he intended, certainly, but a gift nonetheless. It was the final push I needed to break free from patterns that had imprisoned me for decades, to discover who I really was outside the narrow role I had been assigned in my family's drama. Sometimes the most loving thing we can do for ourselves and ultimately for others is to walk away from relationships that diminish rather than enhance our humanity. Sometimes healing can only begin when we stop trying to fix what was broken long before we had the power to repair it. I do not know what the future holds for my relationship with my parents. Perhaps someday my father will recognize the harm his actions caused and seek genuine reconciliation. Perhaps my mother's evolution will continue allowing us to build something new from the ashes of the past. Perhaps Ryan and I will grow even closer, creating the supportive sibling bond we were denied as children. Or perhaps not. And that is okay too, because the most important relationship I have healed is the one with myself. I no longer measure my worth by others' ability to see it. I no longer sacrifice my dignity on the altar of belonging. I no longer accept scraps of attention from those unwilling to offer a full place at the table. I am whole. I am enough. And that knowledge hard-won through pain and loss and difficult choices is worth more than any approval I ever sought from those who could not or would not give it. That final quiet declaration was not the end, but the foundation of a new reality. My world had stabilized, defined by my success, my chosen family, and the sturdy, unshakable boundary I had finally built. Yet, boundaries I was learning did not stop the wind from blowing. They merely determined who got to stand inside the fortress. The silence from my father, William, had continued a deep, telling void in my life. It was a silence that spoke of broken ego, not regret. But 3 weeks after that Thanksgiving gathering with Ryan and my chosen family, the tranquility of my new life was breached by a sudden, jarring email. The subject line was simply William Bennett Personal Update. It was not from William, of course. It was from Daniel, my attorney. I had instructed Daniel to act as a permanent firewall intercepting all legal or financial communication from my parents. I opened the message with a detached curiosity I had not possessed a year ago. The email was concise, professional, and devastatingly factual. William's financial collapse, which Ryan had alluded to, was worse than we knew. His forced sale of the real estate firm to his partners had not stabilized the situation. It had triggered an avalanche of debt and legal claims. One of the claims specifically related to an old partnership agreement and some dubious land deals in the 2008 crash that William had quietly obscured, was now demanding a massive financial settlement, one he absolutely could not pay. The most crucial detail was buried in the third paragraph. William was filing for personal bankruptcy. As a contingency, and in a move that reeked of manipulative desperation, he was seeking to challenge the validity of my swift removal as a signatory from his last remaining business account, the one I had joined just in case. Daniel was confident we could squash the motion easily, but the email ended with a warning. Given the circumstances, your father's new counsel has indicated they may attempt to contact you directly to pressure a family-based settlement outside of court. Remain firm and direct all communication through me. Do not respond to any emotional appeals. I read the email twice, feeling the cold weight of the past trying to drag me back down. This was not about love or reconciliation. It was a last-ditch attempt from a man drowning in his own hubris, still seeing me as his most reliable lifeboat. The old Nathan would have felt crippling guilt, the conditioned need to be the responsible one and save the family name. The new Nathan felt only a profound, protective anger. I called Julie immediately. I needed to anchor myself back in reality, away from the legal jargon and the phantom chains of obligation. They are still trying to use you, Nathan, even when he is broke. Julie said, her voice sharp with protective indignation. We were at my apartment sipping coffee while the morning sun streamed in over the Rockies. He is trying to claim I was an essential part of his business structure, and my sudden withdrawal somehow caused him financial harm, I explained, running a hand through my hair. It is garbage, Daniel had said, but the sheer audacity of it. It is classic, William, Julie replied, setting her mug down. He never solves a problem. He just finds someone else to pay for it. The only difference is, this time you filed the divorce papers first. You cut him off from the ATM. The bankruptcy is sad. I conceded, leaning against the kitchen island. Not for him, maybe, but for the wreckage it causes. Ryan Mom, the other family in Richmond. Julie looked at me with deep sincerity. You are allowed to feel sad for the situation, Nathan, but you are not allowed to feel guilty for not setting yourself on fire to keep them warm. You chose freedom. You chose your worth. Her words were the shield I needed. I spent the next 2 weeks focused relentlessly on my work, channeling the agitated energy into a pitch for a major tech account. The drive to succeed was no longer about earning William's approval, but about fortifying the life I had earned, a life that was immune to his manipulation. Then the true conflict began. I returned home late one Thursday night, exhausted but exhilarated after closing the tech deal. As I unlocked my apartment door, I noticed a figure sitting on the bench outside the unit, partially obscured by the hallway light fixture. My first thought was a neighbor. My second was a sense of profound, unwelcome recognition. Sitting there hunched and looking older than his years was William Bennett. My blood ran cold. He had not called, had not emailed, had not sent any notice. He was in Brighton on my doorstep, hundreds of miles from his crumbling life in Portland. "Hello, Nathan," he said, his voice raspy and low. It lacked the resonant authority I was accustomed to. It sounded small, defeated. I did not step into the apartment. I stood framed in the doorway, the light from inside illuminating the hardness in my expression. "You should not be here, Dad. You know I communicate only through Daniel." He struggled to his feet, leaning heavily on a cane I had never seen before. "I flew out this morning. I had to see you. This is not about lawyers, son. This is family. Family." The word was a weapon in his mouth. "That is a narrative you destroyed, William," I replied, using his first name intentionally. "A boundary marker. Daniel has my instructions. You are violating my explicit request for space." He ignored the statement, his eyes darting over my face, searching for a flicker of the old compliant Nathan. "Margaret told me about the promotion. Executive Creative Director. I am proud of you. I always knew you had my drive." The compliment landed like a punch. He was trying to invoke the conditional love, the measured approval I had spent my entire life chasing. Do not what he challenged, a hint of his old anger returning. Do not be a father. I came all this way, Nathan. I have not been sleeping. I am ill. I need to talk to my son. You came here because you are desperate. Not because you are ill, I countered, my voice low and steady. You are trying to circumvent legal process and leverage my emotional connection to you for financial gain. I warned you this would not work. The fight went out of him. The mask of the successful businessman crumbled, revealing a man utterly terrified. He took a staggering step forward, and I instinctively stepped back, putting distance between us. "The bankruptcy filing is a formality, Nathan," he pleaded, his voice cracking. "But the partners are moving to liquidate everything. Ryan, your mother Mew will be ruined. I need capital, not a lawyer. I need you to step in as the responsible one. The responsible one is the one who set boundaries and protected himself from this inevitable collapse," I stated firmly. "You had 30 years to be responsible, William. You chose secrets, lies, and neglect. You chose a second family in Richmond and expected me to be your safety net." He flinched visibly at the mention of Richmond, glancing around the hallway. "Margaret told you that woman it was a mistake a long time ago. She used me. But this is different, Nathan. This is the Bennett name, your heritage. My heritage is a three-way call demanding money for a trip I was not invited to," I said, a bitter clarity washing over me. "My heritage is a lifetime of feeling less than enough. I severed those ties. The Bennett name means nothing to me now but debt and emotional extortion." He grasped my arm, his grip surprisingly weak. "I only need you to sign one document. A guarantee. It buys me time." I looked down at his hand on my sleeve. This was the moment of ultimate conflict. The logic of my newfound self-worth stood against the deeply ingrained emotional command of family first. The urge to comply, to make the bad feelings stop, was a ghost of my former self. I forced myself to look him in the eye. "Let go of me, William." He refused, the desperation tightening his grip. "You will not even look at the documents. You will not hear me out." "I do not need to," I replied, my voice dangerously flat. I reached into my pocket, pulled out my phone, and opened a newly composed text message. I came home expecting a win celebration, not a confrontation. I am calling building security, and then I am calling Daniel. You have 30 seconds to leave the premises before I press send." His eyes widened in genuine shock. He had not expected the Golden Sun to call the police on him. The fear of public exposure, of losing his carefully curated image of control even in his downfall, was more potent than any financial threat. He yanked his hand back as if burned. "You are throwing away your family, Nathan," he whispered, venom laced with sorrow. "You are making a huge mistake." "I made my mistake years ago trying to earn love that was not for sale," I said finally, stepping into my apartment and blocking the entrance with my body. "I am done with the sale. Now leave." He stood for another long moment, defeated, the cane clutched in his hand. Then he turned, the heavy silence of the hallway swallowing the sound of his shuffling footsteps as he retreated toward the elevator. I did not close the door until the elevator doors shut on his retreating figure. I leaned against the heavy wood, my heart hammering a frantic rhythm against my ribs. I had won the battle, but the victory tasted like ash. I had fully severed the last tie, not with a lawyer's pen, but with my own voice. I spent the next hour pouring whiskey with Julie, recounting the confrontation. She did not offer platitudes. She simply listened, validating my choice with her presence. "That is the real win, Nathan," she said quietly, clinking her glass against mine. "The old conditioning tried to take over, and you used your logic and your boundaries to shut him down. You chose self-preservation over performance." The true shock came 3 days later. Daniel called me late Sunday afternoon. "Nathan, your father's counsel withdrew the motion to challenge your signatory status. They are dropping all attempts to contact you directly." "Good," I sighed, relief flooding me. "So the threat is gone?" "The threat is gone," Daniel confirmed. "But the situation has changed dramatically." He paused. "William Bennett did not file for Chapter 7 bankruptcy. He filed for Chapter 13. I paused. Chapter 13 was a reorganization of debt, suggesting he had some source of future income or assets he was trying to protect. So he is trying to save something. Exactly. He has found a substantial backer. Someone has stepped up to provide a massive personal loan to cover the most pressing debt and buy him enough time to restructure. A cold knot formed in my stomach. Who, Daniel? Who would be crazy enough to bet on William's sinking ship? That is the interesting part, Daniel said, his voice dropping slightly. The lender is listed as a private investment entity based in Santa Fe, New Mexico. The primary contact is the entity's managing director, and the managing director is Daniel. Paused for dramatic effect. Your mother, Nathan. Margaret Bennett. The phone slipped in my damp grip. Margaret, who had spent months preaching about William's ruin, who had moved to Santa Fe for a fresh start away from his lies, was now bankrolling his attempt to salvage his financial life. But the most unsettling realization was why Margaret had received the bulk of the assets from the Portland divorce settlement, the money she was supposed to use to rebuild her own life in the desert. She is bailing him out with her own settlement money, I said, the absurdity numbing me. She is, Daniel confirmed. And I have to imagine she has a deeply personal, non-financial motive for this level of risk. I hung up. The answer slammed into me with the force of a revelation. Margaret had not been buying William time. She had been buying his silence. The long time ago mistake of the Richmond family was clearly more complicated than a simple affair. It was leverage. The image-obsessed, socially climbing Margaret could not tolerate the public humiliation of her ex-husband's bankruptcy case, a case that would inevitably drag her into court and expose all of William's secrets, including the depths of his long-term deception and the existence of his second family. Not just to the family, but to the entire Portland social circle she had desperately tried to impress. Margaret had not moved to Santa Fe to heal. She had moved to a safe distance, only to now use her financial independence to ensure William kept his mouth shut and the Bennett name, or at least the appearance of it, stayed out of the public trash heap. I had chosen self-preservation and dignity. Margaret had chosen appearances and quiet compromise. The contrast between my hard-won freedom and her willing return to captivity was stark, a final painful lesson in the different forms family trauma takes. I realized then that while I was free from my father's expectations, I was not yet free from the shadow of my mother's choices. I needed to see Ryan. This was too big to process alone. I looked down at the ledger in my hands. I had sought simple freedom, but I had been handed a weapon capable of total destruction. The ultimate choice now lay before me. Use the truth to end the war, or remain silent and watch them all consume each other. The leather-bound book felt impossibly heavy. It was not just a record of financial fraud. It was the definitive empirical proof that the story of my life, the decades I spent trying to prove myself worthy, had been built on a foundation of professional criminality and emotional exploitation. The $1,900 was not for a vacation slot. It was a bribe payment, a transaction that had branded my heartfelt attempt at familial duty as an act of facilitating William's deceit. I pushed the ledger back toward Peter. I do not need to read it, Peter. The fact that he used my responsibility to fund a criminal payoff is enough. Peter looked relieved but still anxious. Then you will talk to Margaret. You can make her see that this lawsuit will expose everything. The Richmond family, the fraud. William goes to prison and she loses the millions she just invested. I leaned back, steepled my fingers, and looked straight at William's former partner. The cold logic of the new Nathan was fully engaged. You want me to clean up William's mess, Peter? You want me to leverage my personal trauma, the revelation of his crimes, and my mother's desperation to save your bottom line. You want me to do exactly what William always wanted, act as the responsible, uncompensated intermediary? Peter stammered. No, Nathan, you just want the war to end without public scandal, and you believe I am the only person who can deliver that outcome. I finished, the realization hitting me with ice-cold clarity. You all see me as a resource. William saw me as an ATM for his crimes. Margaret sees me as a shield against public shame. And you, Peter, see me as a diplomatic tool to protect your assets. The entire system was still trying to pull me back, not as a son, but as a solver. The price of admission to their drama was still my dignity and my emotional labor. I picked up the ledger again, but this time I did not push it back. I gripped it firmly, taking ownership of the evidence. Tell William that I know everything I said, my voice quiet and final. Tell him I know the $1,900 was a bribe to silence a witness. Tell him I have the ledger detailing his frauds. And tell him this: I am not going to Margaret. I am not going to Daniel. I am not going to the press. Peter's eyes widened, hope flickering. You are going to stay silent. No, I replied, standing up, towering over him. The restaurant noise faded away. It was just Peter and Mithi, last two custodians of the Bennett disaster. I am not staying silent. I am removing myself from the entire ecosystem of lies. I am no longer William's son, Margaret's intermediary, or your weapon. I am Nathan Bennett, and my worth is not negotiable. I placed the ledger into the inner pocket of my jacket, securing it. It was my final peace offering to myself, the concrete evidence that my family's betrayal was a fact, not a figment of my emotional hurt. You are not going to use it, Peter pressed, bewildered. You are just going to hold it. I am holding the truth I confirmed. And William will know that I hold it. That ledger is not for winning a lawsuit, Peter. It is for ensuring permanent freedom. As long as William knew the full weight of his past was secured safe and silent with the one person he truly feared, the one he discarded, he would never again attempt to leverage me, Ryan, or Margaret. I reached into my wallet and laid a crisp $50 bill on the table to cover my untouched glass of water. The war ends tonight, Peter. Not with a lawsuit, but with the threat of absolute exposure. Tell William to settle your claim. drop his lawsuit, and use Margaret's money to disappear quietly into Richmond with his other family. If he does not, the ledger goes to the Department of Justice. I left Peter sitting alone, stunned amidst the pristine cutlery and expensive French wine. I walked out of the restaurant and into the cool Brighton night, leaving the toxic system to implode on its own terms. The next morning, I secured the ledger in a dedicated safety deposit box. The key was entrusted only to me and Daniel, with instructions never to open it unless William attempted contact with me or Ryan or sued Margaret. The ledger was not revenge. It was the ultimate non-negotiable boundary. Within a week, Daniel confirmed that William had abruptly settled the lawsuit with his former partners conceding to their terms. The bankruptcy filing was quietly restructured, and William's communications vanished not just from my life, but from everyone's. He had chosen the quiet disgrace I offered over the public prison Peter threatened. My mother, Margaret, never reached out to discuss the loan, nor did she mention the financial strain when texting Ryan. She chose to live with her compromise, maintaining the quiet facade in Santa Fe forever, tethered to William's secrets. My life with Julie Ryan and my team flourished. The Nathan Bennett Founders Fellowship was established, funding its first recipient, a brilliant student who lacked family support but possessed fierce, independent spirit. The journey had been long, painful, and costly, but the reward was self-sovereignty. I had finally learned that love, true connection, and belonging are not debts to be repaid or conditions to be met. They are gifts freely given between people who see your worth without you having to constantly prove it.